Good evening, everyone. My name is Adina Brooks. I'm the Vice President of the Board of Education. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Iannuzzi, Ms. Barrios Brooks,
Here.
Ms. Lewis,
Here.
Ms. Castellano Minaya,
Here.
Ms. Clayton Fernandez,
Here.
Ms. Ross, Mr. Single, Mr. Vega,
Here.
Ms. Williams. A quorum is present.
Thank you. Colleagues, can I have a motion and a second to go immediately into executive session to meet with District Council and discuss the employment history of particular persons which may lead to the employment of a particular person?
So move Vega.
And Lewis.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we will hope to be back at 7 o'clock for the open session. Thanks, everyone. Good evening, everyone. May I have a motion and a second to reconvene the public session of this meeting, please?
So moved, Castellano Minaya.
Second, Ross.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Colleagues, will you join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance? Colleagues, can I have a motion and a second to accept the minutes of the Board of Education regular meeting held on February 4th, 2025, as submitted to the clerk and secretary of the Board of Education?
So to move Clayton Fernandez.
Second, Castellano Minaya.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Colleagues, can I have a motion and a second to accept the minutes of the Board of Education Committee of the Whole held on February 11th, 2025, as submitted by the clerk and secretary to the Board of Education?
So moved, Ross.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. And finally, can I have a motion and a second to accept the minutes of the Board of Education special meeting held on February 25th, 2025, as submitted by the clerk and secretary to the Board of Education?
So moved, Lewis.
Second, Ross.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Colleagues, do you have any announcements?
No announcements, but I'll go early this time and say that I got a chance to witness our students talk about their amazing activities with the Green Committee last week. And so I just want to say congratulations again to all the hard work they're doing. It's impacting all of our schools. Thank you to our facilities director to make it possible.
Any other announcements?
Congratulations to all of the students who competed in the Tri-States debate competition hosted by New Rochelle's High School this Saturday. And a special shout out to Albert Leonard's team, who absolutely crushed it. It was wonderful to see students using the power of their voice, their research skills, their argumentative skills. Future leaders are absolutely present in our New Rochelle schools.
Congrats. Any other announcements? It's a little early, but I'd like to announce that the high school will be performing Pippin March 20th to 22nd, and tickets are on sale. If you're into musicals, as I am, I recommend getting tickets early. These tend to sell out. And with that, I will now turn it over to the superintendent for the superintendent's update. Dr. Reynolds?
Thank you very much, Vice President Barrios Brooks. Good evening to our board members, to our community who's here in person, to our community who might be watching from home, and for those of you who will be watching at a later date. With all of the accolades already given in relation to our debate winners at Albert Leonard Middle School, we'll talk about that at a future date. We also had some winners from New Rochelle High School this weekend at our robotics club, who were able to defeat many foes with their mighty robots. I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about our athletics. I'd like to congratulate our boys and girls, our girls and our boys varsity basketball teams. Our girls varsity basketball team made it to the Class AAA quarterfinals last week, where unfortunately, let's give them a round of applause, thank you. Unfortunately, we were defeated by a strong Albertus Magnus team on Friday. Our young ladies have a lot to be proud of. Their coaches have a lot to be proud of. Parents have a lot to be proud of. Supporters have a lot to be proud of. So congratulations to all of you on a fantastic season. Our boys varsity basketball team has advanced to the Class AAA semifinals, which will take place tomorrow at the Westchester County Center at 4:45 p.m. Let's give them a round of applause. They will battle against the basketball team from Scarsdale. If they're victorious, they will move on to the Class AAA championships, which will be held on Sunday at 2:30 p.m. at the county center. So let's congratulate our Huguenots basketball teams together for their second year in a row of advancing into postseason play. Let's give them a round of applause. We welcome everyone to the month of March, or more importantly, to Women's History Month. Now, yeah, let's a round of applause. Now, somebody asked if we stage certain things, right? So a couple weeks ago, I was asked if we stage a specific question or an answer as it relates to the budget. I said no. So now that we're in Women's History Month, I'm sure somebody's going to ask, did we stage how many of our trustees represented tonight are of the female persuasion? And I am surrounded by greatness. So let's thank our trustees for being here and representing the Board of Education in their glory. In these days and times, it's imperative that the contributions women have made to society and culture are recognized and celebrated before they're lost. March also recognizes Irish American Heritage Month. So to all of our Irish American community members, I say, Erin Gabra. Please also be reminded that elementary schools will have a half day of school on Monday, March 17th. Not because of Irish American Heritage Month, but they'll have a half day of school for parent-teacher conferences. All schools will be closed on Tuesday, March 18th for Superintendent's Conference Day. And all offices and schools will be closed on Monday, March 31st in celebration of Eid al-Fitr, the Muslim holiday that recognizes the end of the season of Ramadan. And with that, Madam Vice President, I relinquish the microphone.
Thank you so much. We are now going to turn to our discussion items. And Dr. Reynolds, I'm going to throw it back to you. But I will say that not only is it an honor to be on the dais with my women colleagues, but also to be at a school with two women leaders. So I feel like this is a very appropriate way to kick off Women's History Month.
So I'm going to ask my board members if you would join us down. Are we supposed to come down? Yes. So if you would join us down in the front rows of the auditorium as we prepare.
Please bring your mics.
Please bring your microphones with you and any documents you may need. As we transition down, I would like to start off our presentations this evening. Tonight, we're going to learn a little bit about the magic that happens here at Barnard School, or at Henry Barnard School. Many of you might know that during my tenure as an assistant principal, I had the privilege of working in an early childhood program. I was the assistant principal of firstly a kindergarten and first grade, and then a pre-kindergarten and kindergarten school. As a teacher, I worked in the kindergarten and first grade school. So the early childhood program in that type of iteration feels very familiar to me. I feel like I'm at home when I'm here at Barnard, but not just because of the design of the program, more importantly, because of the bodies that are here. Firstly, it is refreshing if you've never had an opportunity to have, never had an opportunity to witness joy through the eyes of a very young child as they travel through the hallowed halls of a school and they show their expertise in who they are and what they know. This is the place to come to see it. They are actually led by individuals who help them to navigate through the learning pathway. Because as teachers in an early elementary setting, you're never really the adult in the building. You're just a facilitator. You help them learn who they are, right? And that is the joy of early elementary education. Well, we are led by two individuals in this building who do that with nothing but heart. And I'm going to turn the microphone over to our principal of the Henry Barnard School, Ms. Shelley Owens, and her partner, assistant principal, Malik Eiffel.
Okay. You also learn how to figure it out on the move and on the fly, right? Are we all set? Okay. Where did Dr. Reynolds go? Oh, okay. Board President Iannuzzi, you're here with us in spirit. Vice President Sparrows Brooks and Vice President Lewis, Superintendent Reynolds, Board Trustees, Nourishell community, and all friends and family to Barnard, welcome home. Welcome home. Before I get started, I want to take a moment to just acknowledge the building's leadership team. I am at the top of the list, but I am literally a part of a team. I want to stop and acknowledge the reason why this building goes every day. My voice cracks, but I want to make sure that she has her flowers. This building runs because Miss Eiffel runs faster than the building runs. So thank you, Miss Eiffel, for every single thing you do. From the minute we met, from the moment we met, we decided we were a team and not 1 ounce of sunlight was coming between us. And I made it clear, she is me and I am her. And we've never gone from that. Okay. And that's how we empower each other. And that's how we empower the staff. And that's how we have empowered the children. It has all started with us. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Part of the team that we expanded, well, we expanded the leadership team also because we needed more voices at the table. So we invited Ms. Przewski, the Title I liaison, to the leadership table. We invited Ms. Scherhofer, our technology facilitator, to the table. And we've always had Mrs. Silverman, our instructional coach, at the table. So all voices were heard, all women, not a coincidence. It's not a running theme. I just want you to know. The goal has been to expand, to get voices at the table and to make sure the voices are heard, okay? Throughout the presentation, you'll hear me say Katie's name. Katie is our instructional our technology facilitator, and sometimes I call her the instructional technology facilitator because her work undergirds the instruction that goes on. She watches and she looks at the standards to see where technology can support instruction. So there are times I make that mistake, but she's back there. She needs flowers too, so thank you. Okay. And she's sick. Okay. I also want to take a moment to say thank you to every teacher that's here, every teacher that's watching, every teacher that comes in and is dedicated to the children every single day, to the TAs, the lunch monitors, to our special education aides, to the custodians, to everyone that comes into this building every single day comes with the desire to make this building the best it can for the children, not for me and not for Ms. Eiffel, but for the children. So I take a moment now to say thank you to everyone that parks their car at 129 Barnard Road for the children, all the way down to the occupational therapist. So thank you. Okay. Okay. We here at Barnard nurture the whole child. We want children to leave seeing themselves as learners that are important members of the community and the world. Their accomplishments can span lifetimes. We also think a lot about the vision we have here, and we understand that early learners deserve instruction that is responsive and respectful of their learning journeys. Barnard is committed to our mission and vision statements. Structures and systems were established to provide a more proactive approach to instruction. Flexibility has been paramount and has been a shift for many, but the word responsive is defined as reacting quickly, positively, and appropriately. It's not just academic, but socially, emotionally, and culturally. So we believe in these children, not as just babies. Oh, they're just babies over there. No, they are children that are getting ready to be productive members of society. And it is for us to start building that bridge for them. Tonight, we're going to spend a little time talking about who we are as Barnard Bats. I'll mention a little bit about the strategic roadmap and how it ties into Principle 2 of the culturally responsive and sustaining education work we're doing. I'll talk a little bit about cohesion. I'll take you on a little journey, a journey that the children have gone through with technology. I want to also then take a moment to talk about and celebrate Amy's Greenhouse and then end with my superb staff in the back. They are literally getting flowers tonight for tenure. Okay. Barnard is a unique school, not because I'm biased, because I am, but because we, not only are we a pre-K school, all of the children, other than children placed through the special education department, they come in because of either the magnet lottery or through the UPK lottery. We are not a neighborhood school, and because of that, we do not control our demographics, but we love them, who they are, what they bring to us, and how we're going to send them out. So we notice that many of the children are just, what do we call them? Perfectly imperfect people, right? They are a variety of races, different genders. I don't even think they know, right? They don't even realize. But each day we see them and we think about how we can deepen their love of themselves and their learning. And this charge is given to us by our mission and vision statement. The district's strategic roadmap also gives us direction in 4 service buckets: student learning, superb staff, safe, supportive staff, and connected schools, as well as resource management. Each bucket requires its own work, but it's interconnected. The student outcomes arrive when we provide superb staff with support and resources needed to be successful. We also think about the culturally responsive and sustaining education that we are providing and that we've adopted from New York State with our welcoming and affirming environment, our high expectations and rigorous instruction, inclusive curriculum and assessments, as well as ongoing professional learning. Today's work will focus on Principle 2, high expectations and rigorous instruction. Through high expectations, we offer and engage children in high quality work that helps them set goals for themselves as learners and sets their mindset in a yet way. Yet, I haven't done it yet. I'm going to. It's coming. We want children to leave with a sense of agency, independence, and belonging, and it all starts here. This, every time I stand up here, you're going to see this slide. I'm going to tell you that now. This is my favorite slide because it has guided my work everywhere I've gone. I believe wholeheartedly in the notion of cohesion, intentional and focused improvement, moving away from many things, doing many things a little bit at a time, but focusing on the things that we have to focus on and really diving in, really owning them, and then moving things forward. Because this is a guiding principle of mine, I also then realized that growth is happens in smaller increments, but it does happen because it is focused and intentional. We're not running a race. We want children to have a journey of learning. We also have to go through a journey of learning, but that journey has to have a direction. Okay. Tonight, we're going to talk about technology. Before I go into all of this with you, I want you to stop and think about yourselves. Don't acknowledge this, but think about whether or not you grew up with a cell phone. Think about how technology has impacted you in your lifetime. Did you have a cell phone when you were in pre-K? Did your family have a phone? Did you have a DVR? Did you have a CD player? Did you have technology in your class, in your home? And as technology evolved, how did you live with it? Are you able to program your DVR? Have you given up? These children do not know the days of without a cell phone. They don't have a clue. And what we are charged with doing is giving children opportunities and exposure to technology, not even knowing what it's going to look like when they get to their adult lives. The kids now, the children now, like I'm thinking about my friend in the back there, he's got his iPad. He doesn't know life without his iPad. But do you remember raising your children with iPads? Okay. Our journey today with technology we will share a little bit about technology in pre-K. I'll share a little bit about technology in physical education. I'll move into the educational apps we've been using, combined with Legos, coding, and robotics. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how all of this is fed through professional learning. Then we'll stop and say thank you to Mrs. Connolly. Okay. Before I even go into even more of this, I want you to think about these 5 things. These are the educational design and technology standards. Opportunities for accessible and inclusive learning. Developing fundamental skills, because again, these are pre-K through 2nd grade children. Exploring a variety of tools and resources. Expanding and extending on previously taught concepts in multiple co-curricular areas. Continuing to build strong communication and acquiring and appropriately utilizing problem-solving skills. Those are the technology standards that I want you to think about as I share these things with you. Okay. We are an iPad pre-K school. Children in pre-K have access to iPads in their classrooms. This allows them to use grade level appropriate instructional support and access activities like Starfall and other websites. They're able to use Mayan, which is an online library full of fiction and nonfiction text. I say this to you not to say that children are swiping, because kids are great at swiping, but they see the iPad as an instructional tool and not just a swiping thing that they plug in and they unplug to use when mommy is busy. They see it as a resource. We've also experienced some learning, professional learning in that, but I'll share that later on. We also have given children opportunities to use Keybows. This next level experience is hands-on, and it's a robot that the children use where they scan barcodes, and this machine, this coded machine, follows the barcodes. Children learn in pre-K the notion of turning left, turning right, positions, left, forward, sequencing. All of these, the foundational skills start as they build themselves in perspective with these robots. So again, this happens in pre-K. We also have Ozobots. Ozobots are We have shared class sets of them. They are small robots that are programmed to follow with black, blue, red, and green lines. The Ozobots scan over lines and read colors. So now here we are with pre-K children that are learning colors. And they're actually programming Ozobots to move. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there because I've talked a lot. Ms. Eiffel has some Ozobots for you to try. So take a moment. All you have to do is program an Ozobot with the marker. The directions are there. You can try it out. Decide where you want your Ozobot to go using a green, a black, a red, or a blue marker. Once you decide on where your Ozobot is going, turn it on and see if it will follow your direction. For everyone else in the room, they're trying it out. If you'd like to try it out, come and hang out with us and we'll share with you. So you have to decide on where your Ozobot is going. I don't think you can have any gaps. You have to decide this. So as children are deciding on where their Ozobot is going, they have to think about how wide a line they need to make. They have to think about a grid. The trustees are using a grid and they're deciding on where the Ozobots are going based on this grid. As you can see in the picture there, the children make the decisions. They think about right, left, how many boxes forward, how many boxes, and then make a right, how many boxes. All of these foundational skills are happening in pre-K. And there's nothing like a robot that will do everything you ask it to do. Did you get it? You got it. Now imagine being 4 and doing that. So this is happening in pre-K. Right. I'm going to keep going. Where's Mark? There's Mark. Okay. When we think about resources and spaces that provide opportunities for enriched learning, the gym has become another great space. We purchased a smart board for use in the gym, thinking about how it could not only provide the ability for us to have faculty meetings, but could actually support Mr. Cohen's instruction. We did not want a smart board that would just be a projection system, but one that could help with showing and modeling exercises so that Mr. Cohen could support the children. Think of being in a step class. This is the best thing I can think of. You know how the woman's in the front, she's doing all the stuff, you know, and everyone's trying to follow her, but the teacher never goes out and supports the student or the person doing the step class with feedback. Maybe if you do it this way or if you do it that way. The teacher stays in one spot and just kind of yells out to everyone, and the students just kind of follow along, and after maybe 900 times they'll get it, but maybe it would be 899 times as opposed to 900 times if the teacher could go over to the student and say, try it this way. That tool in the gym has actually supported the physical education instruction because Mr. Cohen can teach fitness concepts. The children can see them in action, and as they're working, he can literally support them in the moment. So it's not just a watch a movie and let's call it a day. This example that's coming up that I'll share is just that. And he's used it for even bike safety. Gotcha. Thank you, Mark. Also, thank you, Katie, because Katie and Mark have had coaching moments through the Smart Board. It was a beautiful opportunity for professional inquiry. Mark jumped on it. Katie was there to support him, and I never said, Mark, go and do it. Mark was ready, and when Mark was ready, Katie was there for Mark, and it just grew. So thank you for the professionalism and the openness to try. Okay. We also use our Chromebooks for research in the upper grades. The children excuse me, excuse me. We use apps like Pebble Go. We use World Book Britannica and Gale to collect facts and information. And then we actually do create representations of our learning through Canva, through PowerPoint, and anything that will give us the opportunity to show what we know. This was a fish, and then one of the kids put a speech bubble, and I can't see what it says. But again, I think that's Miss Bailey's class there. I think Miss Bailey, did I see Miss Bailey? Here's Miss Bailey. Hi, Miss Bailey. So this is an opportunity for research. Canva is another tool we've embraced during our November professional learning, our professional learning day in November. Again, Katie provided professional learning on Canva and the opportunities it provides to students and to the teachers. What came out of it was this beautiful, and I don't say it because I'm biased, but I am, this notion of creating avatars. The children were concerned and we were concerned about privacy, but we wanted the children to be able to share their learning. So the children created avatars. Has anyone created an avatar? Okay. Those avatars became the reporters as the children shared what they knew, again in Miss Bailey's class. So roll it. I like to swim. The news one. Can you? Round of applause for Travis. Thanks, Travis. Every year he's like Superman. explaining, she was explaining how to make it. This program is fairly new. We have kits to meet the needs of our pre-K through second grade students throughout the school year. From Build My Emotions, providing students the means to show how they're feeling, to Story Tales, a set that allows students to create the backdrop and characters of their story, to Steam Park, where early learners have a chance to build with gears and motion, measurement, and can solve problems together. They have access to building and growing and making things with their imaginations and with structures. Here are some other examples of making things move. We've been able to introduce our students to computer sciences through coding and robotics. We've used code.org and used the Legos to support this endeavor. Students in second grade are using it, and they will bring that learning to their new schools. I think my colleague Michael mentioned this during his board presentation about the through line of technology that starts here and moves forward. It is a complete coincidence that we have all highlighted, or many of us have highlighted, technology, but it is a true acknowledgement of the fact that we are moving into an era where we have to understand the devices that we have, their capabilities, and also be able to discern that what information it gives back to us and how we can really use it to make smart decisions. So it's been completely coincidental, but I also ask that you take from this notion of the through line of technology and how it really has started at Barnard with foundational work. And again, here are those opportunities that I mentioned, the developing of the fundamental skills, the tools, the communication, and all of those things. But I have to say that it only comes because we've spent time with professional learning. Here you see teachers with their hands on with the Legos, and I believe they had the Ferris wheel was moving. Miss Eiffel was in there with them. Eiffel. And on the right, the teachers in pre-K were unboxing their new iPads and learning about how they can teach the children how to look in their environments and see a simple thing and look at it. So if I look at the wall, I see shapes. I can take a picture of this wall and I can find 10 squares. So something as basic and foundational to us is a big deal. To everyone else, it's kind of like, yeah, they're kind of young, but to us, it is the beginning of their learning. And we are exploring all of those things with them. And as we grow, we provide more opportunities for the children. A special opportunity that the children have had, and I'm going to pivot for a moment, has been the greenhouse. And I want to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who has really worked really hard on the greenhouse since its inception. Amy O'Doherty was family to Barnard through Grace, through Geraldine, Miss Davy. And when she passed, when Amy perished in 9/11, it really became a passion for all of us in the community to support that loss. And we have really worked with the greenhouse throughout the years, and we are going to take the time now to really push that work into the green team work and really meld where we need to go with where we've been, honoring Amy's memory, but also moving into the future with the greenhouse. So you'll see new things coming from there. So I want to take a moment now to say thank you to Millie and to Kathleen, to Geraldine, to everyone who has had any input whatsoever with the greenhouse, from purchasing a brick to supporting through donations, a book, or anything. I say thank you, and there's more to come. And finally, This is the part. When I think about my work here, I think about how, again, superb staff makes this building go, right? Whether I'm here or not, whether Ms. Eiffel's here or not, the superb staff is what keeps this building running. The superb staff we're honoring tonight, I believe they're all, Ms. Zung isn't here with us and Mrs. Brogan isn't, but I'd like to take a moment to just, a couple of sentences about the three ladies that are here and then ask them to come up because they deserve their flowers too. So I'll start with Miss LaDolce at the top right. Miss LaDolce is one of our ENL teachers. I'm glad she's here. I know I made a mistake with the date. I made a mistake. I'm glad she's here. Miss LaDolce cares so much about the children in her care. She supports the ENL learners, not just with acquiring language, but also with their skills. She thinks about what they need and she advocates for them in reading settings, in learning settings. She'll touch base with teachers to see what else can be done to support the learners. And she also works with the instructional support office to make sure that everything that the children need is provided to them. So thank you, Mrs. LaDolce. Come on up, ma'am. It's time for your acknowledgement for tenure. Thank you for all you do. I'm going to go into the middle now. Mrs. DeFabio, where are you, ma'am? Mrs. DeFabio is a woman of few words, but many actions. Mrs. DeFabio received the Scepter Award with Mrs. Bailey last year for all of her wonderful work. And all she said was, thank you. But that shows you who she is, right? She is a woman of great character, a woman who cares deeply, from making sure our harness is on properly, even though that's one of the worst things we have to think about, to making sure that every child in her care is safe from the minute they walk in. We have a new learner that came in who is now with us, and I'll get him out of the car and I'm talking to her about how independent he is and how he just marches in. In the beginning, he wasn't marching in. Now he's marching in and happy. Why? Because he's going to Miss DeFabio's room. There are no words for that. Thank you for that. I am honored to celebrate your tenure with you tonight. Come on over, ma'am. You don't have to say anything. You just need your flowers. Finally, Mrs. Travieso, school social worker. I can't tell you what she did before she got here or before I got here, but I can tell you what she does every day. Team, here I come. To work with superb staff, it's a marriage, right? There are days when you're like, oh, and there are days where that ring is really tight on your finger and you're just like, oh my goodness. Through the hard and through the easy, Mrs. Travieso has remained steadfast, right? When children are having moments on the floor and we're waiting for them to come out of those moments, she's waiting too. And what will she say? And I've heard her say it, we love you. So through it all, she's validating their feelings. And when things are hard and when children are telling her that they are having a hard time, her first response to them, and not in a fake way, in a truly authentic way, is, we love you. Thank you, Mrs. Trek. So come on up. And there's something to running towards the crisis, right? When you hear team, you know someone needs some support and you're running to the crisis. There's a special art to that. So thank you. Mrs. Zhang couldn't be with us tonight, but I do want to acknowledge her. The artwork that she produces with the children is top notch. And we always watch to see what display is coming out. And we learn a lot from all of the work that she displays, with all of the work she displays. And I want to take a moment now to say, I don't know if she's watching. Thank you, Mrs. Zhang, for every marker cap that you popped back on. Thank you for every colored pencil that you sharpened. Thank you for cutting out hand over hand cutting that you've done for any child who needed their turkey cut out the right way. Thank you for every moment that you've given every child so that they could sharpen their occupational skills and their hand motor simply by spending time with you with learning and growing. So thank you, Mrs. Zhang. And finally, Mrs. Brogan works in the CPSE office. Thank you for all you do, Mrs. Brogan. She chairs the CPSE and the CSE meetings. Ms. Fred is there. Thank you for having hard conversations, helping families move in the directions they need to go in, and doing it with such grace and care. So thank you, Mrs. Brogan. I'm not sure if you're watching, but if you are, flowers to you too. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's it. I'm here for pictures, questions, and thank you, thank you, thank you. Questions?
Thank you, Ms. Owens. Thank you to the team for a wonderful presentation, and congratulations to the folks who just were honored for receiving tenure. That I'd love to turn it over to my colleagues for questions.
Say, again, congratulations and thank you for sharing all the tidbits that you did. I particularly enjoyed the bike riding safety lesson. I myself were taught on the sidewalk of Brooklyn and ran into a tree. So I could have used your class when I was five. So I think just small things, learning how to even plant a garden, you have to be patient, right? You have to wait for the flowers to bloom. You have to learn how to water it, overwater. I have a bit of a green thumb. I'm really appreciative of that part too. So just thank you for sharing really tangible examples. I think for our little ones, we forget that the small things are big lessons. So, and this, like my favorite little boy now.
It's funny, it's a toy to us, but to them, it is something they can control and it's tangible. It's interesting, even our perspective. So yes, you're right. Thank you.
Hi, I just wanted to say that, when you think back to your early education, these are the years you remember until till you can't remember anymore. These are the imprints that are lasting. And I think in a unique environment where all the children are seen, heard, active, loved, it's invaluable, it's timeless, and it's absolutely precious. So I say, to the teachers who received their tenure, and the parents that are here, and your staff, all of you are just, it's pure gold. Thank you for being that kind of lift to the community.
And very briefly, I just wanted to comment on the art and literacy throughout every inch of this building. Even right when you walk in, you see it immediately, and you see students have written their own affirmations on the walls, and it's so powerful. One that really stood out to me, it says, "I'm handsome." Yes, you are, and you're smart, right? We want our students and our staff and their families to feel that sense of self. And even being in the library, the book choices, the reflection of our students and of the rich cultures in our community. And it's just such a warm, welcoming, safe, and loving family And so thank you for welcoming us to your home. And that truly is how it feels. And those values and that love are my wish for every grade, even high school and beyond. Every student deserves to feel that love and connection. Thank you for your leadership.
Sometimes I don't know what they'll learn. I don't know what they'll learn from me, but I know how I know how I want them to feel about how I've made them feel. So I don't know if they've learned everything I've wanted them to learn, but I want them to remember that they are valued and loved. And we remind them about that every single day. And that's why that affirmation will remain up there every day. You are here. We love you. We are happy you are here. You are beautiful. You are handsome. And you are important to us. Your voice matters. Thank you.
Thank you all so much, and it's been a pleasure to be here. And I think with that, we're done with our questions.
So I would like to formally thank Ms. Owens, Ms. Eiffel, to the faculty and staff, to the parents of Henry Barnard School, to all of the adults who add to the life of the students and the children who are here. When you think about, the word kindergarten, it's about growing children. The word garden is the German word for garden, literally. That is what the Early Childhood Center is all about. And there's a saying, and I'm probably going to butcher it, but it says something along the lines of, a person may never remember what you said to them or what you did for them, but they will remember how you made them feel. When you walk into this building, the reason why I opened up with the word heart is because you feel the heart in education in this building. And more importantly, something that was shared tonight that I'm going to hold on to is that perfect imperfection. When I talked about the adults in this building not really being the teachers as we see, or we think about in an early childhood setting, but being the facilitators, because I said that because our children are learning a pathway to becoming what we don't know. And oftentimes we learn from children more than they learn from us on this grade level. So I want to thank all of you for setting that path, creating that environment, allowing our students to grow and to be nourished and to flourish, because it is this basis that creates the pathway and the picture of who they will become in the future. So thank you very much for that and for sharing about your building with us tonight. Thank you. So usually this is where we lose people. The presentation is over for Barnard School, when we are now going to turn our attention to the next steps in our discovery about our budget for the district. This evening, I wanted to begin our presentation by reading a statement. And last week, you may have seen, thank you, the interplay of me working with my colleagues, Assistant Superintendent for Business, Mr. Carlos Leal, and Business Administrator, Ms. Joy Mike. This evening, I'm going to begin by reading a statement to help to reiterate exactly where we are in our budget discovery, and also to give some additional information based on some questions we received last week and between the time of our last meeting and this evening. It is important that you continue to communicate with us through the different avenues that we will list at the end of this presentation, because we want the community to know that we incorporate the responses to your questions into our presentation, so we're able to answer your questions in a whole group setting to the community. So tonight's budget update is a continuation of our presentation at last week's meeting. Last week, I delivered a dire presentation. Unfortunately, our reality has not changed. We continue to advocate for adding funding, but we are planning for where we are now and what we now know. We continue to advocate with our state lawmakers and ask them to advocate on our behalf in Albany. Last year, when we were creating the budget for this school year, we recognized that our financial and fiscal constraints would affect us for several years to come. However, the fiscal cliff arrived sooner and more severely than we anticipated. The corrective actions we take now must be long-term and not Band-Aid fixes. We are faced with a $20.2 million hole in our budget to fill. You may wonder how we got here. Well, we delayed a district-wide programmatic review and adjustment during the COVID pandemic in order to support the mental and emotional needs of our students, which rose to an unprecedented level during the pandemic. We hired approximately 20 additional clinicians, counselors, and social workers, and added them to our general budget once the grant funds fully expired. Our history of not taking the maximum allowable amount of tax levies in past years has us now asking the board to adopt a 3.95% tax levy increase, which exceeds the tax cap and will require a 60% majority approval vote for the budget to pass. Our plan to save on transportation costs was not implemented last year, exacerbating our current financial situation. Skyrocketing transportation and health insurance premiums and increased retiree health contributions have also contributed to our current deficit. And the governor's changes to the foundation aid formula this year have cut our foundation aid by almost $500 per student. The governor's hold harmless provision resulted in only a 2% increase over last year's foundation aid, which equates to about $1.3 million. Our recent year-to-year overall increased state aid amounts have ranged from almost $3 million to more than $16 million. Even with the proposed $1.3 million hold harmless money this year, the amount of state aid the district will net will be just under $378,000. In addition, we must also plan for the possibility of losing students to a new charter school this fall. Our plan for the future. In order to talk about our future, we must start with what we've done in the past. As a first step in addressing the anticipated fiscal cliff last year, we implemented a district-wide 20% reduction in discretionary spending. That reduction is also maintained this year. Our operating goal in building this budget to the best of our abilities is to attempt not to touch those instructional and programmatic offerings that are front-facing to our students, and in particular, maintain our core instructional programming. Despite a decrease of approximately 1,000 students over the past 10 years, the need for more robust student support has only grown. In response, by leveraging available grant opportunities, we increased our team of mental health professionals, as stated before. These positions are now funded through our general budget, ensuring ongoing support for our students. However, the decrease in student population has resulted in varying classroom sizes across our district. That is why we will rebalance our class sizes. Some classrooms may see a slight increase in the number of students, but we attest will remain within our optimal student-teacher ratios. This will enable us to reduce our workforce while maintaining equitable access to resources and a familiar learning experience for students across the district. Special education classrooms must be noted, are mandated by law and will remain unchanged. Our transportation plan that would have saved at least $2.5 million annually now must be implemented. In addition to seeking a 3.95% tax levy increase, the same percentage voters approved last year, we will alter the elementary school bell schedule so our contracted buses can complete 2 runs daily and reduce the number of buses, bus drivers, and monitors by up to half. We are in a conversation with our before and after school service providers regarding the viability of having their programs shift with our new schedule to support our families. We will also reduce the contracted services we use and reevaluate our district-wide overtime costs for additional saving opportunities. Effective immediately, we are freezing all hiring in certification areas and positions that are targeted for a workforce reduction. We will continue to hire for vacated positions that require replacements. Unfortunately, we will need to reduce our workforce by as many as 200 positions. These reductions will be across the district and across professions, including administrators, teachers, clinicians, custodians, civil service trade workers, monitors, and security staff. We value our people and regret that this will affect their livelihoods and futures. We vow to notify impacted colleagues as early as possible and to support them as they transition to new employment. These are our colleagues, these are our friends, and we will all be greatly affected. We don't speak lightly about eliminating positions, but it is our unfortunate reality. It must be noted that should the district be in a position to restore any of those reduced positions in the future, any employee who may be laid off next year has first legal rights to be reinstated to those positions for up to 7 years. Our Human Resources Department is tasked with maintaining a preferred eligibility list of employees who will be reinstated to a vacancy in an appropriate position in the order of their original appointments. I want to be clear. The 200 positions is a middle number. The 200 positions is a middle number. Even if we received additional state funding, we would still have to ask voters to approve a 3.95% tax levy increase in order to minimize the cuts. The best case scenario is that additional state funding on top of a 3.9% tax cap levy increase would decrease the amount of positions that we will have to eliminate. In our estimation, in all of our scenarios, and in all of our forecasting, there is no scenario under which we do not reduce positions. Any restorations will be prioritized by those most front-facing to our students. Should our budget not pass, it will equate to an additional reduction of positions. And after that, if that budget should not pass, we will go to contingency budget. There, potentially adding an additional $10 million to the $20 million deficit. Last week, we were asked what percentage would be needed to maintain this year's programming for our students with no changes or reductions in force. The answer is that we would have to ask the community for an astronomical 12.53% tax levy increase, and we know that is untenable. That is why we must reduce the workforce to better balance the budget. We're going to walk down Discovery. Some of it may sound familiar if you were with us last week for our presentation. Other parts of it will introduce some more clarity to the numbers in certain functions as it relates to our budget. being led by our Assistant Superintendent, Carlos Leal, and our Business Administrator, Ms. Joy Mike. We will be introduced to those numbers and those scenarios in this presentation, and we will then follow up with questions and answers. So I'll turn it over now to Carlos.
Thank you, Dr. Reynolds. Good evening. If I may, I'll just jump right in. The first few slides will just be a repeat of the conversations we've had. And you'll notice here that we're now focusing specifically on the budget snapshot. So we've given the overview, but we'll continue to do that this evening. And then we're going to pause to kind of start to unpack by function code the budget snapshot on the operational side. So again, all that we are doing and have done are in service to our vision, mission, and equity vision, aligned to our strategic roadmap in all areas, focusing on student learning, understanding the impact of our staff, trying to maintain a safe, supportive, and connected school, and the best utilization of our resources available. The key factors that were shared previously, and that also highlights our current scenario, is that we, moving forward, need to focus on a different transportation model, which is staggering the elementary school schedule. And then keeping in mind that we do have some capital priorities that we want to move forward with, more specifically, ensuring that the focus on health and safety improvements continue. And then the proposed purchase of property adjacent to the high school for that $1 from the city of New Rochelle. And then all in all, the prioritizing, realigning, restructuring, and the reassigning of resources to meet the district needs. And we'll highlight that throughout this presentation. As discussed previously, our current scenario, the proposed is a tax levy increase of 3.95%. And I need to make note there that that does require a 60% voter approval, as it is an override. And the balance expenditure and the revenue number has to equal. And so that in total is $359,468,597. Reduction in force and realignment of instructional programming are part of the formula in which to provide to you a balanced budget. That would close the budget of $20,216,317. So I'll recap how we got here, which we provided last time that we were together. And this is really the story of multiple years on how we got here. So here's the landscape from 2020 to 2024. And I'll reiterate that over the COVID-19 resulted in a delay of our district-wide programming review. So in looking back at all of the expenditures, there was a time when our community needed to have a conversation which was going to force that conversation in 1920. But COVID happened. And so because of that, we didn't get to engage in that dialogue regarding our programming as a community. So here we are. COVID has now come and gone, and we find ourselves back in that same place. So this is a discussion that needed to happen, and here we are. The expanded grant funds over that time, which include the ESSER dollars, GEAR dollars, 611 carryover monies, equated to about $25.8 million. Over the multiple years of choosing not to seek the maximum tax levy increase, is $7.8 million of revenue that we did not receive, nor can we go back and request. Also, the increased transportation cost, which we all know about, around $9.9 million. Unrealized opportunities for transportation savings that Dr. Reynolds just mentioned, about $2.5 million annually, which is why we are asking to do that this year or moving forward, or need to, should I say. The use of reserve fund, and then the use of appropriated fund balance to bridge the budget gap, which is 17.5 million. And 9 million of that 17.5 was in 18-19, which was the year before we needed to have that deep community conversation in 1920 that we didn't get to have because of COVID. And then, of course, health insurance premiums have increased around $9.8 million. In addition to more context regarding how we got here, our current additional financial constraints, the budgeted for students who are attending this charter school that will be coming into our community, we need to set aside $1.9 million for that endeavor. The increase of pilot revenue, the payments in lieu of taxes, and then the executive budget or the proposed increase via the executive budget is only $377,167 for this particular school year. And if you look back, the increase was 16 million the year before that, and 8 million the year before that, and 8 million the year before that. And I believe I've shared the astonishment when we received our number that it was not even close to what we have had received in the past. And then we're bringing this back from, I believe, our first and second presentation, which is some of the variables for all of us to keep in mind, which are that the New York State teacher retirement system rate has decreased 0.11%. The New York State local retirement system rate has an increase of 1.3%. And then the anticipated health insurance plan rates have also increased. So it's 7.5 to 10% for active employees and 0.5% to 10% for those retirees. Liability and other insurance rates continue to increase. We've had that conversation as well for some time. Utilities continue to fluctuate and increase. And then we have obligations for our collective bargaining agreements. And then again, transportation, other contract renewal increases, which is usually the consumer price index dollar amount that is added onto that previous contract, so the CPI. All that being said, again, we are required to provide you a balanced budget. And so hence the balance here of revenues and expenditures. So I'll just quickly review what we've shared in the previous presentations. Again, the state summary. Foundation aid in the previous year, and we highlighted it in the yellow, was $7.7 million, roughly $7 million to 25-26, which is on the far right, at $1.3 million. Then the expense-based aid, if you follow along on the second row, the blue line, and under the category of actual 24-25 state aid, which was 22 million, there's a decrease for us this coming school year. Instructional material aid, again, underneath the heading of actual 24-25 state aid, is 1,052,768, and there was a slight increase of 6,909. Then overall operating aid, no change. And then the total expenditures. So the actual state aid that we received for 24-25 was 90,539,741. If you look across to the 25-26 dollar increase, it is we only net 377,167, which is significant. So you add that to the original OMG, how do we get here? It just compounds. Previously, I did mention in the how we got here were the tax levy dollars that we did not collect. And so just to kind of highlight those again, that is $7.8 million, again, that we cannot go back and ask for. So that brings us to the tax cap calculation, which Joy has done a fantastic job of highlighting and explaining, which is what a lot of folks in the community were asking for. So I'll just briefly reiterate those. So the tax cap calculation summary, the property tax cap before exclusions, and then the prior year tax levy, tax-based growth factor is then considered and multiplied the prior year pilots. So if you notice here, someone did ask a question about how much did our pilots change, and so you can see the difference between 2025 and 2026. Allowable capital exclusions from the previous year. Then the allowable levy growth factor of CPI, or the 2%, which is the cap that most people hear, and assume then that the tax levy has to be that. The allowable carryover for 2024, there was none, and then the total tax limit before exclusions. So that equates to 220,605,748. And then you have to then move to the exclusions. So the capital tax levy for the current school year, and Joy, I know I'm doing the best I can here. This is your expertise. The maximum allowable tax levy was 232,356,332, and then the maximum percent increase through via the calculation would be 0.33%. That would not net us enough to operationalize. And so the actual tax levy of 240,741,929. And so we are proposing the actual proposed percentage increase of a tax levy increase of 3.95%. Propose the revenue summary. I'll provide you the revenue summary as well. And in this case, if we were to moving forward with the board's approval with a tax levy increase of 3.95%, the real property tax, if you follow that row across under the percent change, the increase, and I'm working myself backwards. So under the title, the 2026 draft budget we would be able to receive a revenue of 240,741,929. The pilots, again, I want to highlight that because again, that was a question, is what is the difference in pilot from year to year? So that is around a $2 million increase in the pilot, but the revenue for 25-26 would be 6,009,276, or a change of 47.24%. Non-property tax items of 5,400,000, charges for services, 4,030,000, miscellaneous, 1,365,000, and then our state aid for 25-26 would be 90,969,008, a slight increase. And then other state aid, you'll begin to see some negative numbers there, and the interfund transfer from reserves. And so that would bring us to a budget draft of a budget of 359,468,587, which is an increase of 11,980,958. And the percent change would be 3.45%. The 3.45% is the change. It is not the tax levy increase. Okay, just want to be clear of that. So in our proposed actions, which we mentioned last week, they include, again, our request for a tax levy increase of 3.95%, reduce contracted services, which is for multiple things that we are doing that we believe we can do in-house because we have the expertise in which to do so. Evaluate and reduce overtime expenses, stagger the bell schedule, balance the class size ratios district-wide, as Dr. Reynolds mentioned, and then reduce district-wide workforce up to 200 positions. Again, this slide was presented last week. This is the bell schedule with having Davis, Ward, and Trinity start their day at 8 a.m. and then end at 3 p.m. Webster, Barnard, Columbus, and Jefferson starting their day at 8:45 a.m. and ending at 3:45 p.m. So you've seen these two slides, and what we've added here are the thematic questions that have come in via the emails or calls to the office. And so the first is, why were Davis, Trinity, and Ward selected as the early schools? And I'll read this. So determining which schools were chosen as the first run schools was based on the number of buses needed for each tier. The number of buses to transport students to Davis, Trinity, and Ward requires more than the number of buses used to transport to Webster, Columbus, Jefferson, Barnard, and some of our outer district routes combined. Had the choice of schools for tiering been reversed, the plan would not accommodate 2 pickups and drop-offs while resulting in increased cost. It really is just that. Why do some buses look empty when observed on their runs? All buses are currently maximized. Once a seat has been allocated to a student, that seat must be maintained for the extent of the year while the student is enrolled in school and the transportation to and from the same address, even if the student elects not to ride the bus. This includes specialized transportation for students who have unique needs. When a bus is observed by a community member, it most likely that very few students may be on the bus toward the start or in the run or in the morning or toward the end of the run in the afternoon. And why do some buses with students pass a school on their way to another school? Was something that was asked of us. Well, due to the programming, placement of students in Kaleidoscope, Magnet, Special Education, Lincoln Zone, Attendance Zone, students' schools selection, some students do not attend their neighborhood schools. And so that's why you may see some buses passing to school with other students headed to another campus. Class size ranges for elementary. We also shared this with the community last week. On the far left, you have the grades. The center column is the 24-25 averages currently. And then in 25-26, the ranges by which we'll be working. Keeping in mind that we mentioned that our goal is to work at the lower end of that range. At the secondary level, you'll see the courses on your left-hand side. In 24-25, the current ranges that are in our current seats now. And then for 25-26, what the goal is in terms of the high end of that class size. And so here we also received some questions. And so here are 2 that were also thematic in nature. Will all classes automatically be maxed? No. What is being presented shows a range of minimum and maximum numbers of students in a particular class for the purposes of budgeting. Not all classes across the district are currently projected to operate next year at the higher end of the range. And I'll give you an example below. In 24-25, grade 5 classrooms currently have about 20 students in them. That is the current average in 5th grade. In 2025-2026, grade 5 will have a range of 22 to 26 students in them. So what is happening in this class size in this case? Well, for the purposes of budgeting, the district will be using the higher end of the range, which in this case is 26. For programmatic purposes, the lower end of the range will be used. Currently for 25-26, the current projections is 22 students in every 5th grade across the system. That is currently the projected number. So again, the range, the lower end is the operational, where we are planning to work at. Keeping in mind that for budgeting purposes, we're using the higher end of the range. Okay. And then we shared the 200 positions, but to start to talk about those, and please keep in mind, we are not sharing specific titles because we do not want to identify individuals because things could change. We could receive a windfall tomorrow, and we do not want to create undue risk. But that being said, if you look at these categorically, these position reductions of the snapshot here, on the left is the position category, which were shared previously. The 24-25 positions, the total number of FTEs or a full-time equivalent, when I say FTE, number in that category, the proposed reduction for 25-26, and then what the percent reduction would be. In the first category of building instructional staff, which includes teachers, teacher assistants, counselors, and clinicians, we currently have 1,168 FTEs, proposing a reduction of 111 or a 9.5% reduction. The second is building administrators, principals, assistant principals, house principals, deans, and department chairs. Currently, we have 39 in that category and proposing a reduction of 2 or 5.1%. Building operations and support, which include clerical support, custodians, food service staff, lunch monitors, registered nurses, teachers, aides, and security. We currently have 491 FTEs, and we are proposing a reduction of 48 or 9.8%. District administrators, these are non-building based administrators. Assistant superintendents, executive directors, assistant directors, supervisors, coordinators, and consultants. Currently have 42 and proposing a reduction of 7 or 16.7% reduction in that category. And then district operational support, clerical support, finance and HR support, laborers, technology, and trade workers. We currently have 152 FTEs in this category with a proposed reduction of 25 or 16.4%. The total is 1,892 positions with a proposed reduction of 194 of those positions, which equates to 10.2%. Did I not say 193? I apologize. 193 with a reduction of 10.2%. So at this point, I'll pass this to Joy so she can provide the snapshot on the administrative side of the function codes.
Thank you. Good evening. Okay, so this evening I will provide a snapshot of a couple of functional areas within the district. We will review administration, facilities. Sorry, I need to actually see it. I can't read that. Administration, facilities, technology, transportation, and security. And so the first slide is for administration specifically. Every area of our district is organized into a function area that aligns with New York State accounting standards for school districts. And so within each of these function areas, they will include salaries, overtime, supplies, contract services, and OC services. So when you look at a function area, it will include all of those categories. So beginning with the Board of Education, district clerk and district meeting, chief school administrator, the business administration, auditing, treasurer, purchasing, fiscal agent fees, legal services, personnel, public information services, unallocated insurance, school association dues, judgments and claims, assessments on school property, refund on property taxes, BOCES administrative costs and capital costs, all combined for administration. So in the far left column, you'll see the function code. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this, but I'll try. Then the description that I've just sort of listed, that first column of numbers is the 25-26 proposed budget. The column to the immediate right of that is the 24-25 adopted budget. That is our current year budget. And then the far two right columns, the first is the dollar change and then the percent change. So again, just to reiterate, these areas will include salary, overtime, supplies, contractual services, and BOCES services as part of the function. So within administration, there is an overall increase of 5.45%, going from 12,026,000 to 12,719,000. So within these numbers, there is a reallocation of BOCES expenses for an election management system. There is an overall decrease in our hourly staffing and overtime allocations. There's also a decrease of one district administrator. There's an increase for fiscal advisor fees and borrowing fees. There's an additional increase for school front software and employee assistance program that is utilized within the district that was recoded from the benefits line where it was coded in previous years into the personnel line. There's also an increase for an improved communication software, increase for liability and other insurance costs, which has been the trend for the past couple of years. And also the salary increases embedded within each function area do align to existing collective bargaining agreements. So again, overall administration for the function codes shown is a 5.45% increase. The next half of what we will discuss tonight is the snapshot of facilities, security, technology, and transportation. The same format as in the previous slide. This will include all of our staff for operations within the district. So beginning with operations of plant and maintenance of plant, both of those are within our facilities department. Then you have security of plant, which security, central printing and mailing and central data processing. You have computer assisted instruction, district transportation, contract transportation, and public carrier, transportation from BOCES for students that are enrolled in one of those campuses, and then transfer to capital. So again, the first column is the function code, then description. The first set of numbers is the proposed budget for 25-26, next to the adopted budget for our current year. You'll note that the current adopted budget is 57.7 million, and the proposed budget for 25-26 is 69,000. The dollar change of 6.2 million and an overall percent increase of 10.87%. Within this function area, there is an increase for BOCES services, for data processing, and also for administrative. Oh, that was in the previous slide, sorry. There's a decrease for hourly staffing allocation across these function areas. There's a decrease of one district administrator, and there's a reduction of 22 operations and support positions. Those positions include clerical, finance and human resources, laborers, technology support, and trades workers. There's an increase for contractual transportation expenses. As Mr. Liel mentioned, that contract is tied to consumer price index. There's also a decrease for public carrier transportation expenses, which is basically the B line, and that's based on actual ridership. And then there is a shift of our 25-26 facilities capital expenses from the capital reserve. If you recall the budget process last year, we utilized the capital reserve for district-wide projects, as well as to allocate money towards the repair of the pool. And then lastly, again, the salary increases are aligned to existing collective bargaining agreements. The next slide really details, as we did last year as well, projects that were requested district-wide in every school building and as well as City Hall. The focus really being on safety and security of our students and staff. And so there are a number of projects that were submitted through the budget development process, and that has been reviewed multiple times to sort of come up with a list of projects that we believe are feasible to complete next year for the benefit of our students and staff. And so you can see the list there, beginning with Albert Leonard and athletics and ending with Ward and City Hall. In addition, there will be a proposition put before the voters for the purchase of property around New Rochelle High School. That does require voter approval. There is an existing plan in place to purchase that property for $1 from the city of New Rochelle. So that will be proposition number 2. going forward. And with that, I am going to turn this back over to Mr. Liao to discuss the summary.
So the proposed tax levy summary, to continue and start to kind of summarize all that we've discussed this evening. The proposed tax levy increases 3.95%, which equates to $240,741,929. So the tax levy increase would be $9,147,962, or the tax levy percent increase again of 3.95%. The projected tax rate per 1,000 assessed value is projected at $901.48, or an increase of $34.26. The average New Rochelle home assessed at $16,000, and we received this from the city assessor's office, excuse me, would have an annual increase of $548.08, or a monthly increase of $45.67. Again, moving forward, this would require 60% voter approval. And this is for illustration purposes because we do recognize that the assessed value does change. In addition, moving forward, to summarize, we've already shared these, but again, we want to just make sure that we reiterate that the proposed actions on our part are to request the same tax levy increase, reduce contractual services wherever possible, evaluate and reduce overtime expenses district-wide, stagger the bell schedule for elementary schools, balance class size ratios district-wide, and reduce the workforce by up to 200 positions. And then looking beyond this budget, realign our practices and potentially shift the timelines of the strategic roadmap as we adjust. Commit to long-range financial forecasting so that we don't find ourselves here, or if this is our scenario, we know way in advance, and so we are not caught off guard as a community. And then programmatic review district-wide. In terms of the budget vote details, if the proposed budget passes on May 20th, by 60% majority, the enacted budget is effective on July 1, 2025. If the proposed budget is defeated, we may resubmit the defeated budget, allowing enough time for legal notices. So basically, we resubmit our budget, or submit a revised budget, allowing enough time for legal notices, and conduct a revote on June 17, 2025, or adopt a contingency budget. If the revised budget is defeated, the BOE must adopt a contingency budget. The contingency budget limits the school district to the amount of the previous tax year levy, amount of $231,593,967. Please note that the contingency budget limits the school district to the amount of the previous year, as I just mentioned. And additional budgeting expenses anticipated in June 2015 need to be taken into account. What we added onto the budget activities, just so to highlight a note, because someone did ask for some clarity on the location of future meetings. We are committed to ongoing communication, and thank you for those who have already sent questions and comments via email or have called. We continue that dialogue. We are, again, the transportation planning, finding as many efficiencies as possible. Construction renovation planning is moving forward. And then looking ahead, our next gathering would be March 11th at City Hall at the next board meeting. The budget will be adopted, hopefully we can continue to move forward. On March 20th, that will be at Davis Elementary School. The budget hearing is on May 6th, 2025 at New Rochelle High School. And that location may change, but it will be at the high school. And then the budget vote on May 20th to the community district-wide polling locations. Some of the emails, many of them actually that came through, were asking how can we advocate? And so our response was to go to our budget page, and on the budget page itself is a link where you could find how to contact our legislators in support of additional funding. So we did redirect quite a few folks there. And of course, we continue to ask for input and feedback. Again, you can speak at a board meeting, send the email to the budgetquestions@nredlearn.org. And of course, attend any meeting, watch the meetings, the streams, the streaming of them, and continue in our community dialogue.
Some people may wonder why it is that we take the approach of presenting the same information multiple times in a presentation. We want you to start to internalize what it is that we're sharing with you. We want the community to be able to have in-depth and accurate conversations amongst yourselves as you ponder whether you're going to support or not support whatever the adopted budget is. Also, being an early elementary educator, I like to speak through allegories and stories. And you may wonder, this really doesn't make sense. How did we get here all of a sudden? And the best way for me to try to explain it to you is think about how much money you spent annually on eggs last year. If you budgeted that same amount to purchase eggs this year, you would be in a heap of trouble. That's as plainly as I can explain why we are where we are. I acknowledge that the burden of the responsibility in this budget is falling on our citizens and taxpayers. We do not take that for granted, and we do not take that lightly. In addition, it must be noted that our workforce, which also includes residents of our fair city, will be greatly affected by our upcoming budget. It is our collective responsibility to present a balanced budget that is fiscally sound while maintaining programs and offerings to meet the needs of our students. We remain focused on our mission, vision, and core values and beliefs. We know these decisions are difficult to make and will have long-term effects on our students, staff, and community. Our vision is fiscal responsibility to our taxpayers and high-quality education for our students. We will emerge stronger as a school district and remain dedicated to helping every student develop their fullest potential. Your input is essential as we navigate this challenging time. As always, you have the opportunity to share your feedback on the proposed school district budget. You're always welcome to attend a Board of Education meeting or submit feedback via email at budgetquestions, no space, budgetquestions@nredlearn.org. Bless you. From our team that is presenting to you this evening, for my colleagues on the cabinet, we thank you for your continued partnership and support, and we will keep you informed as we move forward together. With that, I open this up to any questions from our board trustees.
Thank you, team. Board colleagues. Ms. Ross.
Thank you again for your continued work on this budget and continuing to explain all of the different facets of the budget. If we could go back a few slides, and my iPad is dead, so I don't remember what number it is, but it's where you had the different budget codes. Yes, those two, right? So if you add these up, this is roughly like 70, 80 million. Our budget is higher than that. So like, is it going to be in the next presentation that we'll see sort of how those other budget codes operate as well?
Yes, so please keep in mind, in the same form and fashion that we presented last year, we want to ensure that we break down our presentations to the very specific areas of our budget. So we do have additional budget codes that will be shared with you next week. So we'll have a pretty similar presentation with different slides for the budget and line items that we'll be discussing in the weeks coming.
Great. And then here, and I guess it's maybe more in the other, is there is an increase, I think, in the other one that's more significant, which is driven, it's really transportation, right? That's driving that along with, what is this transfer of capital? What is that about?
Transfer of capital is the expenses utilized for district-wide projects that need to happen, most of which were on, I think, 2 slides from there. There's some sidewalk repairs, some door replacements, cameras, a number of different projects, depending on what was requested through the budget process from the buildings and departments.
And then how does that,
Sorry, hold on one second, if I may add. The reason why that's an increase this year is because we went for a bond last year. So the bond precluded us from having to request to transfer that. I'm sorry.
Sorry. Last year, we had the voters approve utilization of our capital reserve fund. And so we used 2 million of that capital reserve fund for district-wide projects. And the balance of that was going towards the renovation of the pool. I just don't want the taxpayers to think that we were borrowing for it last year.
got it. And then just actually related to the bond. So how does the bond, how is that separate than sort of the transfer of capital, right? The bond is primarily bigger projects, whereas these sort of transfer of capital are more smaller projects that are facilities oriented.
So when you say bond, that's when we're borrowing. We were not proposing borrowing last year. Last year, we proposed using our capital reserve to allocate towards 2 things. One was the pool and the other was district-wide projects. So how is that different? Capital reserve can only be used for capital purposes. It's like a savings account. So we needed voter approval to use it. This year, the same need, we have ongoing capital needs across our 11 plus buildings. And so every year we have to sort of chip away at some of those projects so that our buildings stay in good condition. And so that's what that is. And so we're shifting it from using that reserve to using our budget to make sure that those projects continue to happen.
Got it.
Because we fully utilized the reserve last year when we had the voters approve it. And the reserve that we created has not been fully funded, obviously. We just created it at the end of last budget season.
And then there was one other item. So I think it's maintenance of plant just increased. Is that just due to general increases in maintenance?
Yes, so that's, so again, all of our contractors are increasing, by at least CPI in some cases. And the work is still required to be done. So when you look at the delivery of the materials as well, when we're looking at the cost increase, all of that equates to what we have represented here.
I would also add that all of our utility costs are in there as well, and any leases that we have. So for Huguenot and for our City Hall, all of our lease expenses go into that function code as well. So it's increasing because those expenses are in as well.
And then, sorry, last question is, I know one of the things we talked about going up this year would be increases in health and retirement. I'm assuming that when we see next week's presentation, we'll see those. Got it.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Trustee.
Any other colleagues, questions or comments?
Can you bring back up the slide that shows the staff proposed cuts? And it has a breakdown of the numbers as well as the percentages. I just wanted to note that I think it's important to note that while not one cut or proposed reduction is what we want, I think it's important to notice the percentages here. And I heard you say in the beginning that we would prioritize front-facing roles to students. and ensuring that we're in compliance as well. Special education, multilingual learner support, prioritizing the ratios of classroom teachers to students. And I think it's actually interesting that the highest percentage here is district administrators. And I appreciate that it's not just one position category that is being overly impacted. I think it's important to note that throughout everyone, even the Board of Ed too, you saw $200,000 in a difference. So everyone is going to be impacted by this, but we're going to be sharing the burden and continue to hope that we do get additional funding to help cushion some of these reductions.
Trustee, I want to thank you for highlighting that. I can't overstate the approach that this team has taken to ensure that the burden of our current fiscal constraints are equally spread across the entire community. Again, hearkening back to my statement of realizing and making sure that it's clearly stated that I understand we are asking a lot of our community members and taxpayers. The task of making sure that there is some equity, but more importantly, student-centered decision-making as we go through this difficult challenge of getting closer to the financial situation that we need to be in is going to be felt by all members in our professional community. Thank you, Trustee.
Just a quick reminder, just to reiterate what you said before, that this is not the worst case scenario. It can get worse if the budget does not pass. There is a window that if the budget fails, we go to 30 mil, if I remember that correctly. So when you're thinking about the questions that you want to submit in that last slide, and once you're having those conversations with your other members of your community, please do remember that the numbers that you see today are what we're trying to hold on to keep our programming afloat.
Thank you. To reemphasize, yes, this scenario that we're currently presenting is at the cost of piercing our tax cap at 3.95%. Again, if for many reasons the community chooses to vote down this budget, we have an opportunity to present it again at the same 3.95%, hoping for a different outcome. We could possibly lower the requested tax cap levy increase, or we could just present the actual budget of 0.33%, which is what our actual tax cap levy increase is. If that is voted, well, if we get to that point, we are at the $30 million deficit. If that is voted down and we have to go to contingency, there are additional cuts that will be necessary. And in addition, what many people don't know in the public, there are New York State laws that go with a contingency budget, which include non-use of our schools and fields in the evening and on the weekends. So for all of our community organizations that utilize our fields, if we go to contingency, we are no longer allowed to offer that to the community. In addition to other aspects of use of our district that we are used to as a community. So a contingency budget is definitely not something that we want. It's even deeper cuts, and not just cuts, but cuts to our everyday life, even on the weekend. Thank you, Trustee.
Sorry, I just had two other questions. One was was the question. Can you remind me what our tax certs were for this past year? The amount that we budgeted for it?
That I don't know that we
No,
have
okay.
that right now, but we can provide that to you and we'll definitely provide it as, an answer for our next question, our next meeting as well.
Yeah, no problem. And then just, I know that we've asked the question, but I'll ask it again. Are there any, have we just made sure that when we think about all the reimbursements that we might get from the state, have we just accounted for all of that within kind of thinking through what we're getting from the state aid, foundation aid, all of those different line items that we've looked at? And you've probably looked at it more than once, but.
Yes, we've looked at every scenario of what we would love to have. Again, we don't foresee being in a position where we're getting a full 12.53% amount of money from any source or any combination of sources. But yes, we have looked at what it is that the state could do. And again, the goal is not to get a gift of a windfall, because quite honestly, if we were to get just money, let's just say in a gift, it's great. Yes, it would stave off some need to reduce the workforce, but you're basically rolling it over another year. We might be in that position where we would have to reduce the workforce next year. What we are really asking for and advocating for is correcting the changes that were made to our formula so that they are perpetuated, and whatever money we would receive in the changing of the formula would actually be counted for years in the future. So that's really what the goal is. What we're advocating for is really fixing the formula and the changes that were made to us that adversely affected us. And please know that, there are always options, and something, maybe I shouldn't even say this out loud, but we're here. The state could present to us, providing us kind of a loan. I'm not interested in accepting a loan to plug up, again, a portion of our deficit, which we will have to be paying back in some form or fashion for 30 years. I cannot set up however many superintendents come after me in a position where they're getting less funding for years at the hands of a decision that we are making to fix 1 year. That just is not feasible in my mind. Again, we're looking at all options, but in looking at those options, I want us to be realistic as in terms of what it will mean for us in future years.
Thank you. I have a request and a question. The request is, as we are moving forward and sharing the building, the slides that have the various codes going forward and digging into other parts of our budget, it would be great, and you alluded to this Mike, when the changes are because of a recoding as opposed to an actual change in cost in either direction, to be honest, to somehow note that for us. So, when I looked at the slides earlier today, I was like, oh, that's a big change there. And it was great to hear, well, actually, it's not that we're spending so much more, it's that came from a different line. But it would be great to be able to match those up kind of easily. So when people see big changes, they can quickly understand that that's whether it is actually a change, an increase in cost, like transportation or something else, or just money that now doesn't exist somewhere else in the budget because it got recoded. So that would be great. And that could be a note somehow, or just noted on the slides or what have you. That would be awesome. And then my second is, and I think I know the answer, but maybe for the public to explain a little bit more about the proposition and, when you buy something for $1, like, is it really $1? And what are the benefits that we see, et cetera? I think it would just be great, since I think we've been really rightly focused on the big implications of the other pieces of the budget, but I don't want people to not understand the purpose of that proposition.
Thank you for that question, and I wish you didn't ask it. So to be very honest, the property that we currently utilize for if I can go back to that slide, might be helpful. If you, would you mind being my Vanna White for a second? So the area that's kind of outlined in the red around our property, we currently use that for parking. That property is not owned by the district. It is owned by the city of New Rochelle. So we're using it with their permission. You know, we're not breaking the law. We're using it with their permission. But we don't have the opportunity to maintain that property the way that we would like to. So we would have to call out to the city to get them to come and do what we need to do. Basically, because the city owns our property, they're liable for whatever happens on that property. We would like to be able to maintain it better for our students, our staff, and our visitors. So by purchasing the property from the city for $1, it allows us to maintain it. So you're absolutely right. The purchase price, and again, Proposition 2, because the budget itself is Proposition 1, then this ask to use $1, literally $1, to purchase a property is Proposition 2. So by us owning it, we'll be able to maintain it better. Yes, we will assume the responsibility and the financial cost to maintaining it, but we're able to put it on a schedule so that we're able to just make it safer to meet our needs as we see fit. Yes, okay. Any other questions from our board members? Any other questions from our board members?
Actually, I have a different, yes. Do we anticipate that we would make any changes to the property?
We do over time. It will be on a planning purpose. Keith Watkins is here in the audience with us. So if we are allowed to use $1 to purchase that property, we would sit with our city manager and make sure that whatever plans they had in place, we're made aware of, taking a look at what the cost out factor is and things of that nature. And we will incorporate that into our planning of maintenance of that property.
It would be great to understand the long-term cost of maintenance of that property. Thank you so
Understood.
much.
Thank you.
No further questions, colleagues? Thank you very much, team.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the opportunity.
And with that, I think we will return to the dais. Colleagues, this evening we have 2 first readings and 1 second reading from our policy committee. And I'm going to ask one of our policy committee members to walk us through what we're seeing here this evening. Ms. Lewis?
Sure, thanks for turning over the mic. So very quickly for the audience, do know that there are changes that are made that are suggestions from New York State. And so when the policy committee meets, we are taking the suggestions that are coming to us from the state to make sure that we are up to code with all of our policies. And so the changes that we're making there are to make sure that we're aligned with state policy. The one that will be sunsetting tonight is on our seating arrangements. As you've seen before, we typically tend to sit in the same spaces. That was a policy of the board, and now we are sunsetting that today just so that we can sit in different positions. That is it. The other 2 was just the first reading, and then we're going to move forward in future meetings with the second and third reading.
Colleagues, do you have any questions about policy 0100, the non-discrimination and equal opportunity policy, or policy number 5605, voter registration for students, or the sunsetting of the member seating policy, which is 9135? I would just note that I was really happy to see the voter registration for students changes, allowing for pre-registration for students that are not yet 18, but will be by the next election. I think that might really improve voter registration of our young students. So I'm excited to support that policy when it comes to a vote. So thank you for that. Moving on, liaison reports. Seeing none, we are now going to move to public comment. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to convene into the public comment period of the meeting. The Board of Education adopted policy 1230 in April 22 to ensure all members of the public had the opportunity to speak at both of our board meetings each month. We believe it is crucial for us to hear from our community members about their concerns and issues. Having said that, please note that the board is here to listen. The public comment period is not designed to be a discussion. Accordingly, understand the board will not respond to your concerns and questions tonight. We take your concerns and questions seriously and want to have sufficient time to process and research issues if need be. We will, however, respond to your questions and concerns at a future meeting or have the proper staff member get back to you at the appropriate time. I also want to point out that under state and federal privacy laws, we are unable to entertain any comments or questions about school personnel and students. Please know, however, that we take personnel concerns very seriously. On these matters, we would ask you to go through the appropriate administrative channels. Finally, we recognize that right now our nation and our community are polarized on a number of issues. That said, we want our school board meetings to serve as an example to our students that members of our school board and members of our community can deal with controversial issues in a civil manner and demonstrate mutual respect for one another. In that spirit, we will insist that all speakers and members of the audience maintain civility and respect for any divergent views that others possess. We ask that speakers please address their comments to the board directly rather than the audience. In the unlikely event the meeting becomes unruly, the board will recess the meeting and return once order has been restored. Finally, I want to remind everyone that you may submit written comments to the board in lieu of speaking during the public comment period if you so choose. Tonight, we have set aside 45 minutes for public comment, or each speaker who has signed up before 3:30 today has 3 minutes to speak. If a person requests to speak after 3:30, speakers may sign up in person at the meeting, the clerk, and will be afforded the opportunity to speak for 2 minutes during the public comment period if time permits. First speaker of the night is Miss Otilia Tanner.
Good evening. Good evening. Thank you for the details with the budget and the budget response and the budget report. But I am a little disappointed, as we all probably are. But as a taxpayer and a person that works for the district, I am a little concerned how we're spending some of our money. Fiscal restraints, for example, transportation costs go up 20% or so every year. Additionally, we have our attorneys for the district. I don't see any decrease in their contract. Also, I am concerned about the overrepresented and underpaid folks of color, young people in particular that are working civil service jobs who may lose their jobs. So you can't ask that we go beyond the tax cap as well as lose our jobs at the same time. That doesn't make any sense. So I am curious how many people in central office actually live in New Rochelle. So when we're talking about losing jobs and we live here and going beyond the tax cap, that's not possible to do in the same. You can't have those two issues in the same sentence. In particular, how are your young people going to rebound after this? So teaching assistants, civil service employees must live in New Rochelle, not teaching assistants, but the young people that are the custodians, the lunch monitors, the hourly people. I am concerned about those folks. So I would suggest that we negotiate with the law firm that we use, that we look at this carefully. And when you start looking at cutting jobs, just give us some consideration. We live here and we have to support the district. So we can't do both. We can't pay our taxes, live here, support the district, and lose our jobs at the same time. But thank you.
Thank you. And our next speaker is Mr. Malfitano. Mr. Malfitano.
Hello, good evening. It's not a very good evening, unfortunately. Lady just talked about transportation, a 25% increase, 20 million to 25. How much of the busing expenditure is mandatory by state law? Not discretionary by the district. I'd like to hear that at the next budget session. Okay? We're talking about mandatory versus discretionary spending. That might be an area to look at. A couple of things. I contacted all of our legislators, Shelley Mayer, Fernandez, Otis, Paulin, all of them, and invited them to come tonight to talk and maybe give us a little hope. Because as you know, this is the executive budget, as you were talking about, the governor's ridiculous proposal. But maybe one of them is going to get up tonight and say, well, the legislature is thinking of redoing something. Let's hope. The tax levy. I don't like paying taxes. But I think in some years past, we went to 6%, 7%. Let's consider it. You're gonna get this passed. Don't worry about it. You got to mobilize the people like you do. It'll work. Don't worry about it. Nobody votes. But I was a union delegate down in New York City with the teachers, and we went through a financial crisis, and we helped each other as a union. We forego our raises as a union. Parents are suffering, kids are going to suffer, all kinds of people are paying a price. I would not feel comfortable working in this district, making 125 G a year to see the teacher's aide in my class get laid off. I'm hoping you're in negotiation with your bargaining agents, your bargaining folks, and say, hey guys, are you willing to help and step up? Is the union willing to consider foregoing increases, not canceling them, but foregoing, defer them, like we did in New York City to save our college jobs? We can get through this together, but we got to stick together. This is the time for union power to mean something. It isn't, I got my job, you don't, because I got seniority. That's not how it should work. I hope you guys are talking to these folks about it. Now, we're 20 million in the hole. If you double the tax to 7%, maybe that's not, maybe now you're on a whole 11 million. Now, I don't know if there's good politics, but we got to put some heat on these state legislators. So everybody out there tonight, you call Shelley Mayer. She's the head of the damn education committee for the Senate. Tell her to get on a stick. Steve Otis, Amy Pollin, and Senator Fernandez. Let's show up.
Thank you, Mr. Malfitano. Next up, Mr. Keith Singletary.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say thank you for addressing some of the questions asked last week. I actually have a number of them today. My overall theme is, you mentioned, our mission and core values, focusing on being fiscally responsible and high quality. I would like these words to focus on high quality as well as accountability. For high quality, some things it's relating to high quality of education. I moved here and a lot of my neighbors moved here because of the high quality education. And as you factor these cuts, I think we need to make sure that we maintain a high quality of education. For that reason, as you factor certain cuts, particularly how you maintain quality of education with class sizes increasing. Secondly, have you factored how you're going to provide more training to teachers to basically teach a high utilization with more students in the classroom? Relating to, cutting reducing overtime expenses. How exactly is that going to impact actual programming? You know, is that going to have an impact on after-school programs? Is that going to have an impact on sports? Relating to process of your budget, improvement every week. But one thing that I think we could continue on is as you have large variances, providing a deeper explanation. Provided an explanation relating to the reserve transfer, but something relating to security on a plant, I think could be explained a little bit better. Another thing is relating to hypotheticals. As I stated, a number of people moved to New Rochelle for the quality education. If they become aware of higher student to teacher ratios, you're probably going to have more people choose to go private. And have you factored the impact associated with that? Will that have an impact on your budget going forward? Most of all, branding. How are you with these cuts going to maintain New Rochelle to be an employer of choice for young teachers, for young talent, young administrators? I'm going to say personally, I see an improvement within the superintendent's office. I look at some of these facts upon us and say, hey, someone could have tightened the belt further. We could have been more efficient on our spending. And with that being said, even as you look at, as you talk about on slide 18, this is relating to executive budget state aid proposal increases. And there's constantly been a narrative like, hey, the amount of increases have gone down. On my job, I don't always get an increase. So I think we have to understand that in many of our jobs, we don't always get an increase. So we got to be more efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, are there any other speakers signed up? Great. Oh. Hi, Ms. Tassim.
Hi. All right, guys. First, Barnard School. I just looked at some of your numbers and demographics and things looked a little weird. I noticed that, you know, in pre-K, you have 63% Hispanics, 13.5% Blacks. And then it jumps. In kindergarten, you have 73% Hispanic, 9.61% Blacks. I'm just looking at this and seeing that these don't really match the demographics of the population. So they hit me funny. Same with the whites and, you know, male, female. I did the percentages real quick while you were talking, but that to me resonated a little funny, especially knowing that this one little girl who had come here and the mother talked about how she loved being here in pre-K and then they transferred her to Davis and she would have loved to stay here at Barnard, but somehow she didn't even know about re-entering a lottery and stuff. So I think we have some opportunities here. That's what I wanted to say with that. So the budget is so unacceptable that we are at this position. There is no reason for it because financially, we got a windfall of money during COVID. So financially, COVID was pretty good to us, right? So we knew the money wasn't going to be forever. And we said right from the beginning, let's spend this wisely because it's not something that we're going to continue. Unfortunately, we did exactly what we said don't do. Do not hire people permanently on funding that you only have temporarily. We went right ahead, rolled off the cliff, and hired permanent people. So this is not an accident that we're here. This is, to me, reckless, right? You talk about we got $25 million and then we didn't get $8 million. Okay, so then take off the $8 million. That means we still got $18 million. 25 minus 7, rather, I'm sorry. That means we still have $18 million ahead of things. So we shouldn't be behind, right? So those are some of the numbers that I think you could use. We should have been working from that basis, right? We couldn't charge because we said, okay, we'll give them less. Then we shouldn't have started from 25 million. We should have started from the 18 million. The transportation thing, again, You got to look at some other things. There's a reason why you have more buses going to Davis and Ward. We all know what it is. You're busing kids out of their home districts into another district. So why aren't we looking at changing that? Because that's what's costing us a lot of money. It's going to take more time, but we had since last year and we did nothing against it. So those are some of the things. Don't give us a budget that is flawed and then tell us it's our fault if we go to a contingent plan. So make sure you take your time, figure out this budget and present us with.
Thank you, Mr. Esteem. Thank you, Ms. Esteem. Are there any other speakers this evening? Public comment? Seeing no takers, we're going to move to our, sorry. Ms. Carl, it's good to see you.
Carl, 43 Belmont Avenue. I have a question about code 1060, district meeting. You've gone up 132%. What is that cost for? You know, should we have our meetings at City Hall? Is it coming to every school? Is that why you have more money? You need more money?
Ms. Carl.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question. I do not want to establish protocol that is going to be expected moving forward. Generally, we do not answer questions from the public in the moment. I'm going to ask Carlos Leal to come up and express again. That's the only reason why we're doing this. It's because it was shared during the presentation. Can you give a fuller understanding of what that budget line is solely? And that will be the only question that will be answered.
Okay.
So the response is that this is in regards to moving to the electric.
Carlos, can you please
can you not
go
hear
to the
me?
mic, closer to the mic so that the translator can hear you? Thank you.
Ms. Carl, if you step to the side, then Carlos can get to the mic and
Sure.
everybody at home can hear as well.
All right, thank you. So this particular line item, that's been 1060 right here, the district meetings. That is in response where the costs associated with the electronic voting expenses are on that particular line. So it's an increase to those services for that particular purpose.
Please keep in mind that that is not a district control cost. Those increases are coming from the vendors, and that increase to services is what's represented in that budget line.
Thank you for breaking with protocol. Thank you. Also, I want to speak about transportation and the inconvenience or maybe even hardship for some parents with this. Please reconsider. And if you have special cases, how are you going to handle it? And also, what does this mean to children that are bused out of the district? If they live in a district that the school that they should be going to starts at 8:30, but their school that they're being bused to because they don't want to attend our school starts at 8 o'clock, are they going to be given special consideration? And also, I think it's time to go back to the developers of New Rochelle. The taxpayers have been paying dearly for all this development, and our schools are losing. So please, maybe you should invite them to one of the meetings at City Hall so they could understand what we're going through. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carl. Is there anyone else? Seeing no takers, I'm going to now move to the consent agenda. Colleagues, can I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda for personnel resolutions number 25-289, 1 through 11, number 25-290, 1 through 3, number 25-291, 1 through 9, and number 25-2921 through 13, according to the recommended action for each item.
So moved, Castellano Minaya.
Second, Ross.
All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Colleagues, can I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda for general resolutions 25-293 through 25-305, according to the recommended action for each item?
So moved, Ross.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Colleagues, our next meeting is next Tuesday, March 11th at 6 p.m. in the Central Administration Offices at City Hall. This evening, we are adjourning in memory of Norton Roman, a retired teacher at Mayflower School who passed away on December 20th, 2024, and Eileen Burke, a retired librarian at Davis School who passed away on January 18th, 2025. I want to give a shout out to our colleagues who I know who are not here this evening, who are watching from home or from their workplace, including Mr. Single, Mr. Vega, and Mr. Iannuzzi and Ms. Williams. And with that, I would love a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved, Castellano Minaya.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Have a good night, everyone.